You enjoying smacking my boys around, stranger?
Well, it's not quite the party you and Blister's booty gonna have. Smacking it up in that cozy jail.
Blister's booty? Oh no, I ain't going back in the cell with him. Oh no, I got dignity. I ain't going back, never going back. I got dignity. You do not want to know.
In 1997, Oddworld debuted onto the scene with Abe's Oddysee, a title that would go on to see major success, selling over 1 million units a year later, despite the game nearly being internally sabotaged by an executive at Oddworld's publisher, GT Interactive, because he had a fit about the game for some reason. This is pretty early to go on a tangent, but the funny thing is, that executive took footage of Abe's Oddysee to his boss, thinking he can convince his boss the game will suck, only for the boss to look at the game and go, "Yo, this shit is rad," and giving the Oddworld team even more money for their budget. It's a nice story of corporate meddling actually working to the game's benefit instead of its disadvantage. So yeah, eat shit, you fucking suit. Anyways, with the success of Oddworld, the series seemed to have a bright future, and for a time it did, with Abe getting his own sequel, followed by him joining a new main character in Munch's Oddysee. Sadly, after that, Oddworld hit the end of the road for a good long while when Stranger's Wrath debuted. Unlike other Oddworld games, Stranger's Wrath took a totally new direction where previous games had a focus on platforming and puzzle solving, and here Stranger takes on the first-person shooter genre. And to its credit, Stranger does some very unique things with the genre that to this day haven't been repeated since. In Stranger's Wrath, you play as a bounty hunter who is saving up money for a very important surgery he needs to survive. And to earn that money, you're going to need some help with some very lovely homicidal critters. That's right, in Stranger's Wrath, you aren't actually using guns. Instead, Stranger uses a double-barrel crossbow that can hold 2 different critters at a time. Now you may be wondering, how does Stranger get his ammo? It couldn't be from barrels, could it? Well, my dear viewer, you are totally right. But thankfully, this isn't the only way. This is a semi-open world game, and around the maps, you can find critters roaming around enjoying their day, and through your electric personality, you can convince them to join your cause. Take these boom bats for example. You can find them flying around from nest to nest, and once you convince the critter to join your cause, you can pick them up, equip them, and then you're finally ready to... Oh my god, did I just fucking radicalize an animal? Yeah, I'm guessing that's a 2-week wiretap from the FBI coming my way. So this is primarily how Stranger gets his ammo, and I gotta say, it's an incredible way to get you immersed into the environment. Ammo doesn't run out often, but by placing the critters around the map, you are actively paying attention to your surroundings, whether you are roaming around the environment or neck deep into a firefight. It's just so much more engaging than the traditional pick-up ammo off of the 12 dozen corpses you left on the ground. And what's even better than that is each ammo type has their own uses. As mentioned earlier, the boom bats are your explosive ammo and will home in on your targets to absolutely devastate them. Then you got the chippunks, who are these obnoxious loudmouth rodents who causes enemies to drop whatever they are doing and seek out the little shit so they could curb stomp them to death. Then you have the thud slugs, which are basically your shotgun rounds. They send enemies flying across large distances and knock them the fuck out. Hell, they're even good for what I like to call non-lethal manslaughter. You might have noticed I showed an ammo type that was lethal, an ammo type used for utility, and an ammo type that was non-lethal. This is just a small example of the wide variety of ammo types Stranger's Wrath offers, and how they could change your playstyle. Some of them even combo incredibly well with each other. Watch how I lure this bounty away with a chippunk and then use these spiders called bolomites to subdue them and get an easy capture. As you play the game, you can find plenty of ways to combo your critters together, and that experimentation is what causes the game to stand out from the totally overcrowded pack of shooter games. But sadly, there's a downside to this. Swapping ammo really messes with the pacing of the game, because every single time you need to swap, you have to open the ammo menu, assign the critter to one of the barrels, and then close the menu. Which during all of this, you are actually pausing the game so nothing is going on while you do this. Think if Doom required you to pause so you could swap from the shotgun to the BFG every single time. This is especially bad because in combat, your critters have so many uses you actively want to switch it up mid-fight. The funny thing is, I don't think this is bad game design as much as it's just dated. During its time, Stranger's Wrath was actually critically acclaimed and nominated for a ton of awards by multiple media outlets, so at the time, this ammo swapping mechanic was clearly not a hindrance. But as game design improves, we can look back and see stuff like this and realize it wasn't the best thing to have. I would actually love it if we got a radio menu that allowed us to swap ammo on the go, and instead of straight up pausing the game, it goes into slow-mo instead. This way, you don't interrupt the pacing of the fights too much, and you can easily get creative with your ammo types. So like I mentioned, Stranger is a bounty hunter, which means we've got a wanted dead or alive system going on. If you capture bounties alive, you could get a big payday, but if you take them in dead, your payday will be cut in half. Because of this, Stranger encounters a wide variety of targets ranging from Mealy McGraw, who rides around on top of a much bigger enemy that has a turret mounted on his back. And then you have Pack Rat Palooka, who summons an energy shield around himself so he could just pelt the shit out of you with rockets. What Stranger makes up for in unique characters, they also lack severely in unique boss fights. See, Mealy McGraw and Pack Rat sound like interesting fights on the surface, but in reality, over the course of the game, you kind of realize they were just regular enemies with bigger health states. Almost none of them have unique attacks. They all just kinda chase you down and just start blasting. And this is a problem because there are some boss fights that do more than that. When I went to go bag Joe Mama, and yes, I do mean Joe Mama, she had a unique setup where she was blocking the only way to get to her by electrifying the rope you can climb to reach her. Now, from a distance, you could just mow her down, but if you want her alive, you had a puzzle to solve. The way you actually solve this puzzle is you equip the Fuzzles, which are these flesh-hungry abominations from hell that are oddly adorable, and you just fire them at Joe Mama. From there, the Fuzzles will begin to devour Joe Mama's flesh, causing her to run around and scream in pain long enough for you to cross the rope and knock her the fuck out. Yeah, Stranger doesn't really mess around. If the game had more situations like this where boss fights present an actual obstacle, then many of them would be more memorable. But as it is, nearly every single boss can be taken down by just using this one simple combo. Equip a Thud Slug and a Zap Fly. Let the fly charge up and hit the boss. This will cause a taser effect the police love using so much. And while the boss is stunned, you let them get up, and with your Thud Slug, you blast them with it, knocking them down long enough for your Zap Fly to fully charge up again, allowing you to repeat the process. With this combo, you just straight up stunlock any boss that gets in your face. It really makes the fights so much more trivial than they should be. Now, when you knock out a boss, you suck them into Stranger's magic bag, and you get to claim your bounty. But dear God, let me vent about the sucking real quick. See, sucking isn't so bad when it's just bosses. In fact, you feel like you straight up earned a good suck when you knock them out. Problem is, you could suck up all of their goons too, and at no point in the game is there a way to upgrade that bag to turn the suck into a turbo sucker 9000 to save you some time. So every time you decide to suck an enemy, you spend the same amount of time every single time. By the halfway point, you are ready to say fuck taking them alive and let God sort it out, but there is a balance problem with the game. The lethal options are significantly weaker than the non-lethal. In the game, you have these critters called sting bees, which are hornets strangers will use to kill enemies by shooting their stingers at them. Imagine being stung by a hornet 900 times within 9 seconds. Yeah, that's a fucking violation of the Geneva Convention if I ever saw one. Besides the moral problem with this, the actual balance problem is it takes nearly a full clip of sting bees to take out a single enemy. Thankfully, this actually does get fixed in the later half of the game, because each critter gets an upgrade, and by God do the sting bees become your worst nightmare. These fucking umbrella BOWs totally destroy everything in front of you, and you're gonna be so glad these little guys are on your side. I know the last section has been pretty negative, so let's talk about what the game does right, and that is map design. With so much variety and combos the critters give you, the devs went out of their way to make sure that Outlaw maps cater to what playstyle you want. In an early level, Stranger had to capture a bounty that held himself up in a fort. From here, you have a choice. You could go in guns blazing Red Dead Redemption style, or you could utilize the bushes and corners placed around the map to take out the goons one by one. If you decide to take the stealthy approach, there's even an entrance on the side of the fort so you don't have to bust down the doors to get inside. Many of the boss areas are like this, and it really challenges you to think on how you want to approach each situation, and that is what I call damn good map design. Also, in a pretty unique twist, Stranger's Wrath is one of the few games where the environments get better over time. Starting out, you'll be in a desert area surrounded by different shades of brown with the occasional red and greens from plant life, but not too long after that, you'll be traveling in a sewer system that are strangely filled with color, an exotic rainforest filled with beautiful plant life and lighting effects, and also a... Where the fuck did Stranger go now? Yeah, you know what, ignore that last bit, we'll talk about that later. Still, I find it pretty rare for environments to get more interesting as the game goes on. Hell, some of the games either never change like Blood Rain or have some pretty hard misses mixed in with their hits like Stranglehold. I keep referencing those games for some reason. On a side note, the way Stranger heals himself is by literally dabbing the pain away. Stranger actually invented the dab in 2005 and no one even realized it. I guess the reason why no one realized it is because Stranger's Wrath sold poorly. So do you remember earlier when I said the Oddworld franchise would remain dormant for a long while after this game? Well, that's because in a year after its release, Stranger's Wrath sold about 600,000 copies when the goal they needed was 1,600,000. This is strange considering Stranger's Wrath was highly acclaimed at the time, but according to Oddworld creator Lore Lanning, this is majorly EA's fault. Stranger's Wrath would be an Xbox exclusive at launch, and when asked about it, Lanning mentioned EA's role in marketing of the game could be described as sabotage, with how little exposure they allowed them to have. Now, normally we know this would be a case of he said, she said, but at this point, we know damn well about EA's history and the hundreds of studios they've buried. So it's safe to say Lanning is telling the truth. And honestly, I gotta give props to the Oddworld team, despite some of the criticisms I have. The experience the game gives is definitely something unique, and given the context of when the game was released, Stranger's Wrath pushed the idea that shooters don't have to be these cut and dry carbon copies of each other. The gameplay loop of choosing a bounty, finding a bounty, and raiding the bounty's base sounds very simple, and it is. But I could play an entire game just doing that. And, well, I did. That's basically the gist of Stranger's Wrath, but I have more to say on the game, although to talk about that, we're going into spoiler territory. And trust me, the last third of this game is incredibly different. So if you want to go in avoiding the last section, check the description on where you could find my final thoughts on the game. And if not, prepare yourself for what is basically another game. So to recap the story, Stranger is hunting bounties because he needs a life-saving surgery. Unfortunately, the price of the surgery is steep, and even with the bounty Stranger is bringing in, it won't be enough. That is when Stranger is made an offer. A corporate overlord named Secto offers Stranger enough money to hunt a creature known as a Steef. Stranger agrees, and later on in the game, he is ambushed by a rival bounty hunter, who heard Stranger knows where a Steef is. Stranger is captured and is revealed to be a Steef himself. Stranger has been hiding his extra pair of legs in his large boots, and to avoid suspicion, he shaved off his own horns. Stranger breaks free and now everyone is scared of him. The only problem with this writing-wise is the game never really explains why Steef are hated or feared, besides Secto having a collection of their heads. Soon after, Stranger is taken in by a species known as grubs, who look up to the Steef because they used to be the protectors of their village, until Secto attacked them and killed their guardians. With a common enemy, Stranger teams up with the grub tribe to take the fight to Secto. So with that explained, this last third of the game is where the bounty hunting gameplay loop is thrown out the window, and we have a more traditional linear shooter. On one hand, I feel like the bounty hunting loop doesn't give you any leeway for any epic climaxes, since it's just boss fight after boss fight with no real development in between. On the other hand, this direction the game takes comes with the drawback of the game becoming a shooting gallery. With the way maps are set up, most confrontations are forced head-on without much room for stealth, if that is your preferred playstyle. You could still do stealthy things, but that openness of the previous map designs are no longer here. So if you like that freedom of choice throughout the game, you might think this last part is a drag because your choices become much more limited. So you make your way to Secto and you're rewarded with a pretty bad boss fight. Secto has 2 generators that act as his health, but also has a massive fucking death ray that charges up. Thankfully, plot debris falls into the arena, allowing you to take cover and avoid the death ray. But sadly, that's all there is to this fight. Take cover behind the debris, shoot the shit out of the generator, and then find another place to take cover. Once you destroy both generators, the game is finally over. Man, if I had $1 for every time I reviewed a game with lackluster boss fights, I'd have $3, which isn't a lot, but it's weird to tap in 3 times. So in closing, Stranger's Wrath is a very unique game that makes it stand out in the first-person shooter genre. Sure, there are more mechanics that might not sit well with modern players, but that is more of a side effect of game design being better than what it was over a decade ago. If you're tired of shooters but want to experience something unique, I think Stranger's Wrath has enough to offer. You could pick up a remastered version of the game on PC and Nintendo Switch. And also, if you're one of the 30 people who still somehow own a PlayStation Vita, it's actually on there as well. Usually, I don't know what I'm reviewing next, but hey, if you got any suggestions, I now have a list of games I'm interested in reviewing, and I put any suggestions on it. I totally did not steal that idea from Mandalore. Nope. But if you want to make a suggestion, you could comment on the video, or join our Discord and you can hang out and tell me yourself. Anyways, if you like the video, you should like the video. Maybe subscribe because I appreciate any form of support, and dear God, do I need it right now. I just graduated college. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Please help. Anyways, I'm gonna go dab the pain away. God, I'm gonna go fucking dab the pain away. So I'll see you next time.